Hey guys, welcome back. So now we're jumping back into the Venom series, which has just been blowing my mind lately. And for me initially, I was thinking, how does Ewing follow up after what we'd seen in issue 18? Because that one was a game changer, with him showing us the origin of No before the beginning of the universe. But as amazing as that story was, there was a lot of things that we saw that's going to unfold over the course of time. And as we come back, we get a really good look at a piece of that story, which had us asking a lot of questions. So let's get into it. But first, if you're new to the channel, be sure to subscribe to catch the spills every week. And don't forget to hit that bell up top so we can squat up in the comments for the first hour. Alright, so for this one, we come back after the crazy reveal of Eddie Brock learning how nulls are made, as well as him discovering his place in the universe and the eventual role that he's going to play. But during that talk, there was a moment where Eddie asked about his son Dylan, and the eventuality showed Eddie what Dylan was doing in this present slice of time, which then showed us Dylan beating the brakes off of Norman Osborn, which we didn't really have much of any context for, but it's with this one where we find out what exactly was going on in that lateral moment in time that Eddie caught a glimpse of. And so to start this off, we begin by going over to the Osborn residence, where we find Normie, the grandson of Norman Osborn, who, since the events of Dark Web, when Dylan Brock gave him another symbiote, Normie became the next Red Goblin. And after Dark Web, Normie's story continued in his own Red Goblin series, which at the time of this video is about 4 issues in, and it's pretty good so far, with it bringing up the sins of Norman Osborn's past, which inherently affect Normie. And it even shows us this process of Normie growing closer to this new symbiote, though the two of them at times still have their ups and downs. But I bring that up because this is where we jump in with Normie, as he's thinking about how Dylan gave him this symbiote, like, hey friend, I need your help. Put on this killer alien. Because sure, you put on a killer alien before and it nearly killed you and everyone you love, but this time it'll be different. And at this point, with this going through Normie's mind, he hears a knock on the window and it's Dylan. And initially, Normie tries to tell Dylan that he's grounded so Dylan can't come in. And I mean, that's true because Normie is grounded for breaking into a bodega and getting chocolate wasted. But really, this is him trying to avoid Dylan, who just picks the lock and makes his way right in. But for Dylan, with him coming here, he's checking on Normie and his symbiote. But as it stands at the moment, the two of them aren't getting along so well, as we find Normie's symbiote, who he refers to as Rascal, just hiding under his bed. So it doesn't take Dylan too long to realize that Normie and Rascal are still trying to work some things out. But while Dylan's here catching up with Normie, it isn't long before he hears someone coming in, so he quickly shifts back into his civilian clothes to then see that it's Norman Osborn, who of course didn't know that Normie had company up here. So when he asks who's the guest, Dylan's just like, I'm Dylan Wang. And he tells Norman that he's in Normie's civics class and they're learning about ethics. And Dylan goes on to ask Norman Osborn if he knows what ethics are. And so from here, Norman invites Dylan to join them for dinner. But while they're having dinner, Dylan of course is throwing these jabs throughout their conversation on ethics, since Norman Osborn is now walking the straight and narrow. But for Norman, he gets it because of his past. And speaking of Norman's past, I wanted to take a very unique look at that, with a little help from this video's sponsor, Wonder, which is an AI art generation app that I've been having a little fun with for the past week. And I'm gonna show you guys here on my phone how you can do the same thing. And in 4 easy steps, all you gotta do is pick an adjective, a subject, a situation, and an art style. So for example, the adjective I'll be using is green, the subject, goblin, and the situation, wearing black Air Force Ones. Because I mean, why not? So I'm gonna turn on speech to text. The Green Goblin wearing black Air Force Ones. And just like that, we're almost done. For the last step, I gotta pick my art style, and there's over 20 art styles to choose from with Wonder Premium. And out of these, I've been liking mythological the most so far, but you can choose whichever one you like. Oil paintings go crazy too, but I'm just gonna go with mythological. But after you choose your art style, just hit create and let the magic happen. Alright, so for the first one's a shot of the shoes, which is pretty fresh. We got some of the green in there. And for the second one, whoa, it's like all he's wearing is the Air Force Ones and what appears to be like a micro bikini. I don't judge. But with the Wonder app, you can have fun with it. You can even edit your creations in case you want to switch it up a bit. And with Wonder Premium, you can create as much as you like. So for a limited time, you can use my link down in the description for a free trial of Wonder Premium, so you can skip the ads and create away. But then also, just as an honorable mention, earlier I told the app to show me the Venom symbiote as a god, and the results were fire. So you can either have fun with it and have a couple laughs, or you can make something that's just truly amazing. So again, if you guys want to check out the Wonder app, you can use my link down in the description below, and for a limited time, you can use Wonder Premium for free. And with that said, I want to give a special thanks to Wonder for sponsoring this video. But for Norman Osborn, I would imagine, with Dylan giving him such a hard time, Norman probably has the images that we just looked over flashing through his mind. And he's probably thinking, yep, I had a past, I did some things. And that's probably why he's saying to himself, he deserves this, he mustn't forget what he's done, and he has much to atone for. Which is really the reason why he lets much of the slick talk from Dylan just fly. But then after a bit of an awkward moment of Norman trying to cut the tension, he attempts to put on some music, but when he does, he hears breaking news about an armored truck heist that's going down in Midtown Manhattan, involving a villain by the name of Slide. So with hearing this, Norman steps away from the dinner table to go suit up as the Gold Goblin and stop this armored truck robbery. But as Norman leaves, Dylan says to Normie, "Oh, that's what atonement looks like, huh? A shiny gold suit? Like all of that gold can hide the blood on his hands." But after Norman leaves, Dylan then suits back up as Venom, and he asks Normie to tell him honestly if he wants Pop Pop, which is what he calls his grandfather Norman, to come back home. And Normie just replies, "He's my grandfather." Which then for Dylan, that in itself is Normie's answer. Because with Normie saying that, it isn't quite a yes. But then from here we go over to Slide, who's pulling off this armored truck robbery. And for Slide, who's really one of your more obscure Spider-Man villains, but in this case we're told that this isn't the original Slide, Jerome Breacher, or even his brother for that matter, Matthew Breacher, but rather the third Slide, who's still anonymous I believe. But nonetheless, the first Slide, Jerome Breacher, was a chemical engineer who created this liquid coating which eliminates friction between any two surfaces. But many years back when his lab got shut down, he tried to get a loan to start his own company, but that didn't work out, so he turned to a life of crime. And if I remember correctly, the third Slide, he just stole the suit from the NYPD evidence lockup. But from here with him making a break for it and sliding under police barricades like he's on his way to somebody's DMs, he continues to slide away while live streaming this whole thing. But then suddenly this purple orb just drops out of the sky and lands right on top of him, releasing an adhesive that stops him in his tracks. And as soon as he looks up, he sees Norman Osborn, who's really proud of this adhesive produced by Oscorp, with it outperforming Spider-Man's webbing. But with Norman catching Slide, Slide goes on to tell him that he just robbed a bank. That's it, and it's not like he committed murder like somebody else out here. And he goes on to ask Norman, how much did the lawyers cost? What's the figure? How much is enough that it washes off all the murder? And before Norman can even respond, a voice comes out from behind him and says nothing, to where out of nowhere, Dylan just swings in and kicks Norman in the back, which really right there, that would have been enough. But after kicking Norman into the wall, this is only the beginning. But as Dylan goes on to serve Norman this visceral beatdown, we kind of get the idea here that this is more of the Venom symbiote wanting to serve Norman Osborn than it is Dylan. Which makes sense, with the Venom symbiote having years of experience with Norman Osborn while Dylan was just a baby, and even before that. But also we begin to see how this is more the Venom symbiote than it is Dylan, when Norman desperately calls for his glider to attempt to get away, just for it to get webbed and swung right back on that rooftop, only for Norman Osborn to then catch the hands after that. Because first, in this moment, which is the precise moment that Eddie was shown from the Forge when he asked about his son Dylan, it's here where Norman starts to laugh, and he tells them that he thought one day would be Spider-Man serving this punishment. And for Norman, he's hurt so many people that he's not sure exactly who's wearing the Venom symbiote or what wrong he's done in connection to them, because he knows this isn't Eddie Brock and this isn't Flash Thompson. But what he does know is that whatever he did to them, it must have cut their heart. And it's here where Venom gets ready to impale Osborn, where Dylan tells him no, don't do it. And the Venom symbiote, he listens. He drops Norman, but he tells Dylan that Norman Osborn deserves to die. And as they walk away, the Venom symbiote tells Norman Osborn, good session, we'll make another appointment real soon, insinuating that this is something that's going to be happening on a regular. But from here, Dylan goes on to tell the Venom symbiote that they can't just go around killing people. And Dylan's not really sure if he believes in sins or atonement, but he does believe in consequences, and things from there could snowball. And if the two of them turn into judge, jury, and executioner, then that could lead to someday something crashing out of nowhere, coming to kill them. And with Dylan saying this, towards the end of Venom issue 19, we see something punching its way free from containment in a way that looks very much like the first appearance of Doomsday back in 1992 in Superman the Man of Steel issues 17 and 18. Because back then when I saw this as a kid, I was genuinely terrified. Because back in December of 92 going into January 93, Doomsday came out smacking everybody. And I believe to this day the thing that made it the most terrifying from his introduction was the fact that we had no clue who this guy was, where he came from, why he was locked up, who actually locked this guy up and put him away, and because of the less that we knew at the time, the crazier it felt. And I'm feeling similar vibes with how this is done. And though it's definitely not a one-to-one, because this guy isn't completely new, and also the landscape of comics these days is way different than it was back in '92. Trust me. But it feels like Al Ewing is going for that kind of vibe. But when we see this thing that breaks out, Venom issue 19 ends here, with really no further explanation. But if we head over to the Free Comic Book Day 2023 Spider-Man Venom issue, it's here where we see the backstory that leads up to this. And with the way that Al Ewing set this up, man, it's kinda creepy. Because this particular story takes us back to 1940. In the laboratory of the Williams brothers, Joshua and Joel, who are both speaking with a gentleman that they believe is from the newspaper, and they're telling him about this strange substance that they call live rubber that they found buried in a meteorite, which has a composition unlike anything that they've seen. And Dr. Joel Williams tells the guy that they noticed when he accidentally cut himself and it dripped in the petri dish, this strange substance fed on it and grew, which is a discovery that they made after many failed attempts of trying to reproduce the substance through other methods. But when Joel says this, his brother Joshua steps in and he tells the gentleman not to worry, it's not Dracula we're talking about here, but it was more like the adrenaline. But after seeing this reaction from the substance and continuing with different trials and errors, they eventually discovered that phenethylamine had the same effect which could be found in chocolate, and it was from there where they gave this thing a lot of chocolate, and soon after it grew substantially. And it wasn't before long where they had a man-sized amount of this stuff. And with this crazy amount, they had then produced Flexo, the Rubber Man. And upon presentation, Dr. Joel Williams admits that Flexo looks a little goofy, but his brother and colleague Dr. Joshua Williams quickly steps in to tell the journalist that this rubber dreamboat saved their lives. But then when he asks the reporter which newspaper exactly was he from, this gentleman then lets him know that it's not a newspaper exactly, but instead he's getting stories for a new publication called Mystic Comics, who at this point are focusing on real life picture stories, marvels of the age, like the Human Torch, Angel, Monaco, and others. But even with Joshua being a bit skeptical, his brother Joel is the one who's more intrigued. But from here, the two of them together go on to tell the story of how Flexo, the Rubber Man, saved their lives. And they begin by saying that Flexo found them halfway across the city thanks to a little remote, which is more like a beacon. But for what begins as a very heroic tale suddenly takes a very dark twist, because after the brothers describe all of Flexo's heroic deeds, the journalist then asked what happened next. And for a moment the two brothers hesitate on actually letting this guy know what happened, and the gruesome truth of the gory ending to this story, with Flexo slaughtering their captors, which isn't quite the narrative that you want to put out to the media. So instead, the Williams brothers just lied to the journalist, and they tell him that Flexo had just put out a gas, a non-lethal gas, a very non-lethal gas, and that's how he saved the two of them. And with hearing this, the journalist believes them, and he just goes on his way to tell this story for the Mystic Comics publication. And as I mentioned earlier, the thing that makes this so creepy is the fact that in January of 1940, Flexo the Rubber Robot had first appeared in Mystic Comics issue 1, which for Mystic Comics, it initially rolled under the umbrella of Timely Comics, which later turned all their properties into Marvel Comics. But back in January of 1940, the story that was told by creators Will Harr and Jack Binder is the exact same story that we're now seeing that the Williams brothers told to Timely Comics to cover up the dark truth about Flexo. And for me, it's little details like this that I find to be super creative. When a writer like Al Ewing takes an existing story and he creates a retroactive continuity for that story that pulls it into the present in a very interesting way. And I mean, there is things like your honorable mention of Flexo showing back up in Marvel Zombies Destroy, or really a version of Flexo back in like 2012 or something like that. But let's be honest, with all due respect, it ain't the same. But after the journalist leaves, the Williams brothers are pretty much like, whew, okay, good, he bought that ending. But then between the two of them, Joshua proposes the idea of sending Flexo on the front lines. And right away, Joel is just like, that's a terrible idea. But Joshua's like, hey, we got a remote, we can control him. But then Joel then reiterates that it's not a control device, because it only allows them to send Flexo a signal. And Flexo obeys that signal because they feed him and he likes them. And Joel goes on to ask his brother what's gonna happen when the day comes that they're not around, when someone new tries to tell Flexo what to do. Because at that point, the question is, will he let them? And yeah, like, I can't express how much I am excited to see how this unfolds. cause it's like Al Ewing took Doomsday's intro, mixed it up with some Five Nights at Freddy's, poured it all into Cuphead, and it's delicious. And so now real quick, I want to give a special shout out to all the patrons. Thank you guys for all of your support. And for anyone who's new here, who wants more information on how to support the channel, I got a link below where you can go to patreon.com/dopespill. But that'll do it for this one, guys. And once again, special thanks to Wonder for sponsoring this video. But let me know your thoughts down in the comments below if you're excited as I am for what's to come. And we'll do it again on the next one. Alright. Later.